The first thing, okay, let's start with installation. On Windows and Unix, it's little different. On Windows, you can use your graphical user interface, and on Unix-based systems, you'll use YUM command. Uh, you said that you can untar the package and then installation will be done. But installation has to happen in multiple folders. /opt/IBM is one folder, and then where MQSI is another folder where you need the installation to be done. So there are binary files or installables, and then you have a workspace. So you need the files to be placed under. For example, if you double click on an exe in Windows, what happens? Some files will be placed under program files, some will be placed under application data /IBM folder, some will be placed under not the files but entries will be made under the registry. So there are multiple things that has to happen.
So the group is MQBRKRS, right? And the user is also MQBRKRS. What are the file system sizes that we need to have?
The group and the user, yeah, you can have like that, or you can have the group as MQBRKRS and the user as something else, IIB admin or just IIB or ACE. The user can be anything.
Okay. What about the file system size? Like 500
No, you have to check. You have to check the documentation for this. I don't remember.
Okay. The multi-instance queue manager I know, but the broker we can have the same way.
A broker, you can what you can do is you can first set up an NFS, and there in the shared folder you will have you can place the data files of your broker.
So that is where MQSI?
Yes. What are the configurations that you might need on a dev environment? This would be sufficient. You can start working on that. That is your local machine. On a QA or a non-dev environment, you will have to set up security features. That is, you will have to limit access to a certain group of people. You will have to limit access to, or you have to give different levels of access to your people in support, your developers, and others who do not belong to these two groups.
Okay.
So you will create some sort of a limitation to access the web user interface of IIB. You will have, let's say, admin, then people with read access and others. So for admins, you will have read, write, execute access. So these are not Unix file level access. This is web user interface, read, write, and execute. Okay. This is not Unix file read, write, and execute. So for this, you will set up something called as an MQSI file auth.
MQSI. Okay.
You can set this up at the broker level and execution group level. So a particular group of people will have access to one execution group, and another group of people will have access to another execution group. You can make this granular like this. In case you do not want them to have modify access, then you will only grant them read access. That is a MQ file auth command you will provide plus read as the argument.
So MQ file, that is, I mean, what is the command?
AUTH.
I only see like MQSI change authority, MQSI.
I'm
change.
telling you these commands and these configuration steps from my memory. So
Okay,
give me a
yeah.
minute.
It's MQSI change file auth.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
I,
So
I cannot give you the exact command and the exact argument because
okay,
I don't have the system in front of me. I'm just telling you from memory.
this is a good one. So I was, you are talking about the roles, right? Like the roles to give the access to
Correct.
the web UI, access, right?
The access can be given based on the user and access can be given based on the role.
Oh, okay. So MQSI change file auth is the command. Okay.
So you have provided the authentication to these authorization to these set of users, and they can access or deploy or modify based on their access level. Next, what you can do is you can secure the broker by using SSL. The traffic that goes through the broker, that is the MQ, so not the MQ, the web UI commands that we execute, the read, I think the things that we read from the web user interface, these things can be secured using an SSL. So you will have to configure the broker to move away from the default HTTP traffic that goes to 4414 and move it to use a JKS file, some certificates, and move the port to 4443, something like
So
that.
for that, I think for the procedure is to create the key store and trust store and also create the certificates in the key store. And
Yes, you
also,
can use iKeyman
yeah,
command or the IBM key management user interface, graphical user interface to create the SSL artifacts that you need.
I know, but there are two things, right? One is I just want clarification. One is key store, one is trust store. So in the key store, we create these certificates, and in the trust store, we save them, right?
In this
So
particular case, we are exposing the certificate. Okay,
okay,
now we are modifying the web user interface of IIB or ACE to use a certificate. So we are not trusting anybody. We are not asking for anybody certificate so that we can trust them. We are exposing the certificate. So we will use uh, a private key to and provide the consumers with a public key so that they can connect to us and exchange data with us. So there we are only interested in a key store.
key store.
That's
So the key store is just for ourselves. If we have the trust store, we need to place
I'll give
the
an example of a case where a trust store is used. So let's say you have to interact with Azure environment, and Azure is giving you some services on a privately signed or self-signed certificate. So these self-signed certificates are not trusted by any CA signing authority. VeriSign and other CA signing authorities are not trusted. So your trust store, which is a Java trust store and a Java key store, will not have information about this new entity with a new certificate. Okay, if Google or Oracle or anybody else has updated their certificate, then your IIB machine will know about it. If let's say Google has updated the certificate on February 2021, then your IIB machine will accept and trust that Google certificate because not because it is trusting Google, because it is trusting a CA signed authority which has that certificate value, their certificate, the trustor certificate valid for let's say from 2020 to 2030. So
yeah.
they have with their 2030 certificate authorized Google's 2021 certificate as it is and saying that it is issued to this person and it is a valid server, things like that. So there
So
comes the concept of trust store.
okay,
So when you are interacting with Google's or Azure's server, and you want to interact with them. And if it is CA signed certificate, you don't have to take any action, such as in the case of Google. And let's in the case of Azure, and somebody is using a self-signed certificate, then you have to trust them. You have to take the certificate from them over an email or something like that, and add that the key into your trust stores file.
Oh, okay, okay.
Hmm.
So, that means, if it is CA cert, CA cert, then
Hmm.
we we don't need to put that in the trust store, or is it okay to put in the trust store?
No, you don't have to put that into trust store. Or if you add that into trust store also, it does not matter. If it is CA signed, it means it is uh, everybody on the internet, they're going to acknowledge it if they acknowledge the CA signing authority.
Then we need to enable the SSL in the broker, right? Like in the node. For that, we
Correct.
need to the MQSA properties and
MKSA change broker, or is it MKSA change properties? Something,
yeah,
some command like that.
yeah. So it said, I'm just looking at the command. So MQSA change properties and the broker name, broker
Mm.
registry. So -O broker registry, broker key store. So what is broker registry here? So it is. I just.
There are components within the broker which you can modify. There are things with the argument -O that you will provide. Broker registry is given as -O, is it?
Yeah.
So you can give -O broker registry, or -O HTTP connector, or -O JVM manager, things like this. So these are the subsections of a broker which you can modify. If I provide a HTTP connector, then I can modify uh, the features of a HTTP connector, which is port number, its SSL version, so on. If I give JVM manager, I can modify content such as the max memory, the min memory, and a few other arguments of such as garbage collection of a JVM manager. If I provide broker registry, then I'll be able to modify the contents of a broker. There are some properties which are kept under the broker's
Key
registry.
store file, broker key store file is the one we are changing in the broker registry.
Yes. In case you have to modify the execution group's settings, then what would you provide? You would say you would also give the -E, the execution group's name.
So one is MQSI change property for the broker registry, and the other is MQSI set DB forms. So the what I understand is that first we are saying that, okay, hey broker, use this as a broker key store, use this as a broker trust store.
So you will provide file path.
Yeah.
For the store and the trust store, you would provide the file path and tell the broker, I have placed my files at this location, use this. And the second command is in case I set DB params. So there you have to provide the username and password.
Yeah.
For the key store and trust store. So in case of username, you can give that as blank or not applicable, or since the username is not used in that JKS file, only a password is required.
Yeah, I see.
And then
Is there.
yes.
Okay. And
And
the final thing is to enable the SSL for the HTTP listener, right?
correct.
This is done. And yeah, the role-based security. So I know that there are three things. One is LDAP, one is file, one is MQ. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for the LDAP, what we need to do, I can send these commands to you. Just a minute. First of all, before we discuss, so that we can discuss correctly.
Mm. Oh yeah, we were talking about configuring the IIB machine before we hand it over to the developers to
Yes.
deploy something. So we talked about SSL, we talked about file auth, and we'd also have to configure the embedded listener for the execution group.
Yes.
So we create, let's say, 3 execution groups. We have to set port numbers for those execution groups so that the execution group port numbers are not random. They do not start with 01, 02, 03 like that. Why? Because if you stop and start the execution group, the port number might change based on the availability of the particular port.
How can we do that?
So every time the execution group stops and starts, we want the same port number to be associated with the execution group.
Yes.
So for that, you'll have to use a command mqsa change properties broker name hyphen o http connector
Okay.
and hyphen n port and hyphen v the port number.
So
You provide group name and then you will say hyphen o http connector. This is the main thing.
Okay. We are changing for the HTTP connector the port number. Okay.
And you will say embedded listener is equal to true, something like that.
Okay. I will check on that. So
there are two kinds of listeners, embedded listener and broker wide listener. I am telling you about the use case where we want the same port number to be assigned to the execution group. So you'll use embedded listener setting.
So the role-based access means, we can. I mean, what I used to do, I used to like MQSI web user admin is there, right? With that command, I used to mention a user ID, password. With that, in the role like IIB user, there were the roles that we discussed, right? How to create the roles.
Okay.
By law. So by that, that's how I used to give the access to the resources. But
I previously told you about file-based auth. So there are 3 kinds of auth available with broker: MQ auth, file auth, and LDAP auth. Next, if you use LDAP, within LDAP, again there are what is that, CN and DC options, users and groups. Using those groups, you can provide access to specific group or deny access to the remaining.
Okay. So the MQ, what about the MQ?
I have not used MQ based access. I know that there is MQ file and LDAP option.
Okay.
In case you're using LDAP, then in that case, you don't have to create the user. You don't have to assign that user to a particular group as an IIB admin. You just have to tell the Wintel team, the Windows team, to add Ajay using Active Directory into a group called ABC organization / IIB developers. Right.
So you say that you give the access to the group, right? So in case user admin, I only use the -u only for the user. So for the group, what should we give? -g or something?
Yeah, something. I think -r as a hyphen role.
Okay.
I think it's like that. I don't remember exactly.
Okay.
One more thing is, if you're having setting access to the execution group level, then in case of a file-based auth, then whenever you add access to, you create a new execution group, then you have to ensure that you also grant access to read-only group and IIB admin group. All right. So whenever you create a new execution group, the access are not assigned by default. Nothing gets copied by default. You have to explicitly execute those commands.
There is a concept to increase the instances, right? For example, if there is a lot of load is coming, okay, of sudden to the broker. Okay. So we need to ramp up our, we need to scale up.
So when you say there's a lot of load, there are 2 kinds of load that gets pushed in. One is the volume and the other one is the size. So the data that comes in could be in terms of a GB, or the data that comes in could be the TPS has increased.
Okay.
The data size could increase or the TPS can increase. So for the data size increases, then you'll have to manage around with the memory settings. So there is no memory settings for the data flow engine or the eSQL code that we write. There's only a limit, a U limit that you can set at the process level or an operating system process level, the soft limit and the hard limit for that C++ process. Data flow engine is a C process, and the limit for that is at the operating system level. It is not at the broker level or execution group level. If the broker has, the operating system has, let's say, 20 GB or 200 GB RAM, then everything of a 200 GB would be consumed because it's a C++ process and the limit is set at an operating system.
So what are those two U limits that you said? U limit is soft and hard. What is that? Can you tell me again? Soft files or hard files?
I have to just
Okay,
see.
I mean, you just mentioned
two limits that you can set. For example, let's say there's a process such as Excel, and Microsoft Excel is a process, and in Unix I set a hard limit of 1 GB for that Excel. I have to set it for all processes together. It's not for only for Excel. So I set the limit at 1 GB. Then any process running on my Linux machine cannot occupy more than 1 GB. If it requests for more memory allocation, then what happens is a dump would be created and the process would be terminated. That's a hard limit. Next, again, for broker execution groups, there is another memory allocation that we can do. Now we talked about C++ memory allocation. Next thing is there is a virtual machine for every data flow engine. That is a Java virtual machine. Our Java programs written in IIB or ACE runs within this Java virtual machine associated with every execution group or data flow engine. You can assign a minimum value and a maximum value to that.
Where can we do that?
MQSI change properties, broker name, execution group name, and then you would say JVM manager hyphen argument would be min size and max size.
JVM manager.
Yeah.
Okay. What about the TPS changes if the transactions per second comes
okay.
a lot?
Now the data size that comes in is not increased a lot, but the data requests, the number of requests which come per second has increased. So in that case, if if you're acquiring data into a queue, then the queue you will have to make sure that has sufficient capacity. The depth is sufficient to take up that additional load. So you'll change, in case you have 5,000 set as a default value for the queue, you might change it to 50,000, or based on the load, whatever you'll change it. In case you are working on, okay, let's first talk. Okay, in case the data is coming through a web service, HTTP or HTTPS, in that case, the data coming in needs sufficient number of sockets or threads to acquire the data. For that, you will increase the additional instances so that multiple threads can keep listening on the HTTP ports, and as soon as the data comes in, you will acquire and you will process. So for TPS, you increase the threads, and for the volume, if the size of the payload is more, then you will increase the memory setting. JVM, you will modify the JVM setting. One more thing you can do is, let's say the data is coming as files. So the files are getting landed on particular mount point or um, folder. So there, if you see that it is getting filled up, then you will have to increase the capacity of that folder of the or that mount point from 20 GB to 40 GB, something like that.
So when you say increase the instances, how many we can, how much? I mean, what is the number we can put? Like, I used to, in one case, I used to put like 17 for instances. Is
I
there any
think
max?
there I don't know if there's a max. I think you can go up to 255.
Okay, okay. So,
But there should not be increasing it to such a large number. You should consider what the parameters are surrounding this, such as just by increasing the thread numbers, uh, you will not increase the capacity of the server. That's
yeah.
only one level. There are many other components such as a database, a queue, and many file systems and many other things which have to be scaled up along with your threads.
So, is it possible to, have multiple EGs and deploy the same flows so that the load will be balanced?
In that case, what you have to do is you have to use a load balancer. In case you have embedded listener configured, and embedded listener is associated with a particular port, a particular, let's say 7823 is the port number for execution group 1.
Okay.
For the first execution group, the 7823 is the port number, and if you deploy your IIB application into another execution group, it does not impact us or it does not assist us in any way, because the port number for this execution group with another embedded listener 7824 will not help us in any way. In that case, you will need a load balancer already available in your organization and already connected to the client system, that is the source for this transaction. And there you will have to instruct your that team to add that 7824 into their IP config. What do you call that? The load balancer config.
Okay.
So 7823 plus 7824, they will have to add this setting, and then you will get that additional benefit from the new port and the new data flow engine.
So the EG can be on the same server, right?
Yeah,
Because
it can be on the same server. Correct.
and like in the MQ we have multi-instance queue manager where uh, one queue manager is up always and one queue manager is on standby. So
Mm.
I think I did that with the broker. So broker is also same thing, right? With if you have multi-instance queue manager, it can be the same way. Do we need to
Yes.
do any other new
This is
configuration?
why this is why we created a mount point and associated it with two IIB servers, IIB server 1 and IIB server 2. We had the same mount point, and we redirected var MQSI to this WME/data folder, so that when the switch happens, the active instance goes down and the passive instance comes up, the same data, the same applications, and everything is available on the other broker. That is the reason we did that NFS thing.
So for the latest, I mean, I know we don't need MQ for the latest IIB, right?
Oh, let me, I wanted to say one more thing. Let me first complete that. So we talked about embedded listener, and we
Yeah.
talked about load balancing with embedded listener by using HTTP load balancer. You could use Pig5 as the load balancer, or you could use IIB's HTTP server as a load balancer, or something else. So in case you are using the broker wide listener with an MQ associated with the broker, in that case, you don't there will be only one port associated with that broker, because one broker, one port, and one and multiple execution groups. In this case, when you deploy the application into another execution group, you get the benefit immediately. You don't need load balancer. You don't have to make any other setting. You deploy this to another execution group, and that execution group starts processing the load.
Right away.
So the reason is, since there is a queue manager associated with the broker, there are some system queues which are made use of to store the HTTP load. So HTTP traffic comes into the broker and it goes into the system queues, and the broker picks up these messages from that queue. It's all under the hood, so we don't know about it. It's system dot broker dot http dot something, input, reply, and timeout. I think these are the three different queues. So because of this nature, you deploy your application to another execution group, and the effect is immediate, and you get the benefit immediately. No changes required. Yeah.
Okay. Any other production things that we need to discuss, like any issues that you faced and in production?
Memory utilization might go high, CPU utilization might go high, and these things you will have to keep an eye on. What are the reasons? If you are proactive, you can study the behavior of your application broker and make some educated guess. Understanding, you can get to know what is the utilization of a particular execution group or integration server by using the nmon statistics.
What is it command?
Nmon is an application which is available for you to use, and usually AIX boxes will have them. NMON, network monitor.
Okay.
So it usually creates files, one file per day, and captures information about all the process, the memory utilization, CPU utilization, the disk, and others. So using that, you can see if there is a growth in consumption of memory by one execution group, which is unusual. If your the memory utilization is not stagnant, it's not a straight line, it's not uh, settled down, you can keep an eye on it, and then ask the developer to report back why his application or his execution group is consuming lots of memory. It's not steady. Every time you'll have to reload the execution group just to free up some memory. If that occurs, you can ask for assistance from the dev team. But this feature will only give you information about the process. Nmon gives you information about the process. The process would be data flow engine. One data flow engine can have 5 different applications within it. So you have to be proactive to understand which application is causing the issue. So you will have to keep an eye on which application was deployed recently and from when is the issue occurring. The issue is occurring from July, and the deployment occurred for a particular application X. You have to keep a track of it, and then you can go talk to the dev team.
So when you say keep an eye, so what are the monitoring tools that we can use with the broker?
You have Dynatrace, you have IBM's APM tool. There are many tools that are available in the market, and based on your organization, one of these tools will be installed, and you can use the graphics that are created by this tools, and the agents capture the information, and you can learn about the memory used, the CPU utilization, and for the deployment logs, you will have some process within an organization where every deployment is tracked with a change number. And in case you're using a continuous deployment using Jenkins or some other tool like that, you can even go look at the logs within that. Next, other thing what you can see is when you go click on the application within the web user interface, you'll get to see when it was deployed, when a particular application was deployed.
All right. What else? Like we are discussing about troubleshooting. So the traces is like in case I start, I mean, I have to check the command. So
Start trace, stop trace. These you have these two commands.
format.
Try to avoid using the trace.
Okay.
Uh, your system should be built in such a way that without using a trace, you should be able to understand what's wrong with the system. The trace is available at the file level. So you have a service trace, user trace, and trace into a file, that is user defined file. So in these cases, uh, let's say a developer uses the trace node within his flow in 2 3 places, and in case of an emergency, he will instruct the administrator team to switch on the trace. So any information he tries to capture into that node, the trace node, will be logged into, let's say, /tmp/ajay/ something into that file. So he's getting additional information to understand how his application is behaving. That kind of additional tracing or additional capturing of information should not be used in prod, because too uh, it's too intensive on the admins, and it's not something which can be scaled. Let's say there are 100 applications, and you can't the 100 developers can't come to you every time and say switch this on for me, switch that off for me, get that file and give me the data. It's not a process which usually many companies try follow. So where do we need the information to be captured? We want the information to be captured in one place, which is visible to all the developers or all the admins and all the business analysts or people who have particular access or been given access. So you need one place where you can access all the information, and you need that place to have features such as indexing and ability to search. So your logs should be available not in queues, not in files, in a searchable place, such as there are
Splunk.
many options. Yeah. What was the name that you said?
Splunk.
Splunk. Yeah. Splunk is a log aggregation software. You can use that, or or you can use the database, which is age old. The logs have to be in one place. Log should be searchable, and log should be searchable in a fast way. And switching on the logs and switching off the logs should be done as infrequently as possible. So if a new feature is getting released and they need additional hypercare for that feature, at that time you can switch it on and the additional logs are getting captured. Then after 1 month of hypercare, you can switch it off. You can build features like that, but it should not be a daily activity of an admin to switch on something and switch off something. That should not be done on a daily basis or a frequent basis. And other kinds of logging that you can do are with use of monitoring profiles. Now, how do you build switch on, switch off capability? By using monitoring profile, or you build some configuration into your inbuilt in-house custom logging into a database or into a queue. So you can build on-off feature as an inbuilt feature, or you can use IIB's out-of-the-box feature called monitoring profile for logging. Next, in case of a user trace and service trace, these are not for logging. These are for debugging cases when something goes bad and nobody knows what's happening over there. To capture additional information, we use these two options: user trace and service trace. User trace captures some information, service trace captures a lot of information. And when you switch on service trace, your execution group is going to slow down significantly. The only case where you should be switching on service trace is so that you can raise a PMR and you can ask assistance from IBM team. So IBM team will not be familiar with the applications that you have built. They will need information about the processing of that execution group, and if something the eSQL processor is doing it incorrectly. So since they need information about their product, you will switch on service trace and capture a hell lot of information. So it would be like in 100 MB and more when you switch these things on. So it will tell you which line of eSQL got executed and what the input data was and what the converted or transformed output is, and many other things.
Is it readable by us, or only IBM can understand that?
No, it's in a text format, a TXT file. User trace is also in a TXT file, and service trace is also in a TXT file. Initially, it will be in XML. You can convert that XML into TXT by using command MQSA format log.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, okay. So what else we can discuss? Yeah, I mean that's it. So we talked about the role based, and we talked about the things. SSL, we talked about SSL, we talked about role based, we talked about administration, installation. Okay, I think I'm good.
All right.
Thank you, man. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, you're welcome. Take care. Bye.
Take care.